Hey, how's it going? It's Dan from modular.dev, and we're going to continue on our series on Blazor checkers game today. So I think for this one today, we're going to be going over a multiplayer server so that you could create a room and join it. So right now, this is what we have. We have the white pieces that can move and the black pieces that can move, but it's kind of a hot seat local play. There's no multiplayer. As far as over the internet is concerned, on this game. So that's what we want to do today. We're going to be able to, by the end of this, we should be able to create a room, join a room, and hopefully move our pieces around. We'll see how far we get, and if so, we might have to have, if we don't get too far, we might have a fourth episode in the series, but I'm hoping we can finish it all today. So as always, if you enjoy this, go ahead and like and subscribe, and definitely leave some comments if you have any other videos that you'd like me to do. Otherwise, I'm going to go ahead and start a new series fairly soon. So let's go ahead and get started in the code. And right now, let me get this out of the way here, and zoom in a bit. So I think to use the multiplayer server, I'm going to use SignalR. If you've watched any of my other videos, you'll know that I do like using SignalR. It's pretty easy to set up. So I'm going to go ahead and do that for this one as well. So to start, I'm going to be in the startup.cs on the server project. And the first thing I need to do here is configure services. And you just do services.add SignalR. And that's the first thing you got to do. And then on the endpoint side of things, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to do endpoints.add our map hub. And actually, I need to make that hub, but I'm going to end up calling it multiplayer hub. I'll go ahead and create that in a little bit. And when you do that, you want to specify the pattern that that hub is going to use as far as the URL pattern. So mine's going to be at /connect. And, obviously change that to be whatever you need to do. But I'm going to go ahead and create this hub now. And that should be all we have to do in this startup.cs, assuming that you were starting with a Blazor WebAssembly with a server-side hosting kind of model like we did when we created the project. All right, I'm going to go ahead and create a hubs folder and a multiplayer hub.cs inside of it. Okay, and that right away is going to inherit from hub, which is in the Microsoft ASP.NET Core SignalR namespace. Okay, and that should be it. Now in here, I can go ahead and do some things. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to say public void join room or join table, I should say. Basically, these are going to be tables that people can join and play checkers on. And I'm going to give it a string table ID here. And what I want to do is I want to have this player join this table. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do groups dot add to group async, and we're going to do context dot connection ID and table ID here. And I guess this is async, so let's go ahead and await it. And we'll have to change our function to async task. All right, and that should be all we have to do to join the table. I think also I'm going to send a notification that somebody has joined the table here. So let's go ahead and do clients.group accept. I don't need to send it to myself, so I'm just going to send it to everybody else on the table. I'm going to send it to that table ID, and here it takes a list of excluded connection IDs, and we're just going to make a new list here. Can I just put it in there? Yeah, I can just put it in there as an overrided parameter there. Whoops. Dot send async, and we're going to send. We're going to do a method called room or table joined, and we're just going to send one parameter, which is Nah, we don't even need to send a parameter here. We'll just send a message that's saying somebody joined the table. And we'll go ahead and await that. All right, so we got two parts here. We have a table that we're passing in. We're joining that with groups.add to join async, and we're passing in our connection ID and the table ID, and then we're gonna let anybody else on the table know that we've joined. So that's kind of the plan. I think that's what I want to do for the server side for right now. Let's go ahead and go to the client side. So by default, we don't have the SignalR namespace, or the NuGet package rather. So let's go ahead and search for that. So that's going to be signalr.client, and it is this one here, the ASP.NET Core signalr.client one. So I'm going to go ahead and install that. All right, I think it's done. So let's talk about what we want to do on the main page, because if we run this right now, there's not a whole lot going on. We just have the checkerboard. What we want to do, let's see here. Oh, I need to add that here. Just making sure that we've got it running just like before. Okay, so we haven't made any changes on the client side yet. It looks exactly the same. But what I want to do is I want to have a button that says create room, or a button that says join room, and maybe we'll have a list of rooms that they can join and they just choose which one. And then once they've joined a room, then we'll show the checkerboard. So I think that's kind of what I want to do for that. So let's go back into this index.razor, and you'll see now one of the advantages of putting this checkerboard out in a separate component, and that's that we can show it or hide it depending on what our page is doing. So let's go ahead and make a code block, and I'm going to say protected override async task on initialized async. And that's just a function that is built into Blazor. So when this happens, I want to create a hub connection. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. But in fact, I'm actually going to take this namespace here and put it out as a using, because we may be using that for some other things. Okay. I don't know why we're getting a red squiggly here on the checkerboard. I'm going to close this and bring it back up and see if that fixes it. It did not, but it should be working. Obviously, it worked before. So let's go ahead, and I'm actually going to create the hub connection out here so that we have a kind of global access to it. Hub connection equals hub connection builder. Let's see. I think it's new hub connection builder actually. Dot with URL. And here we actually need to get the URL of our server. So I'm going to go in here. Actually, I'm going to go into properties and grab it from the launch settings. That's probably easiest. So it should be this localhost with 44398 as the port. And if you remember, in the startup, I declared it was going to be at /connect. So that's what I'm going to do here as well. Okay, and this is going to be HTTPS. And then we just do build after that. And that's going to create a hub connection for us. And all of the red squigglies have now gone away, so we're good to go. So let's go ahead, and I think what I want to do is I want to have a Boolean that determines whether or not we're in a game or not. So I'm going to say in game. I'm going to set that to false by default. And we're only going to show the checkerboard if we are in the game. So we'll do that, which is going to leave us with nothing. I don't even think we need this actually. I'm just going to take that away. So if we are not in the game, what do we want to show? I think what we want to do is we want to show some buttons here. And let's go ahead and do a button on click equals create game. We're going to create a function called create game in just a second. All right. So let's create that function here. Async task create game. And what that's going to do is that's going to create a game using our SignalR connection. So we're going to have to do hub connection.start here because, or start async rather. We haven't actually started it yet. That's kind of general practice. You don't want to start it until you actually need it. I guess it wouldn't necessarily hurt to start it earlier, but that's what I'm going to do here. And then I'm going to say hub connection dot send async. And here's where you're going to pass in your method name. So if you remember, my method name was join table. All right, so I'm going to say join table, and I'm going to pass in my parameters here, which is going to be my table ID. I think what I'm going to do for a table ID is I'm just going to create a temporary variable here, and I'm going to call it I'm just going to do it GUID.newGUID.toString. That should give me a random ID. Don't really have to worry about it being duplicated. So let's go ahead and do that. And that should send a message to the server saying we're joining a table. And after that, we can assume that we're in the game. So I'm going to set that to true. Okay. I think that's good. Let's double check that at least that functionality is working. So I'm just going to run the project. And you know what? Actually, I'm going to set a breakpoint in my multiplayer hub just to make sure that I can hit this with the table ID. Just to make sure everything is going around correctly. All right, so we have create game. Let's go ahead and click that button. And we did hit the join table, and we have a table ID here. All right, and now we have our checkerboard. So that seems to be working correctly. Let's go ahead and try to have another player join our game. Right now, if we open this up in another tab, we're just going to have create game, whereas in fact we want to be able to join a game. So let's go ahead and we're going to make a list of possible checkerboards or checker games that they could join. And I'm going to just put that as a list of string. I mean, you could probably do it a lot better as far as naming your boards, but I'm just going to have a list of table IDs. Tables. Yeah, I'll just call it tables. And for each table, we're going to show a join button. All right, for each string table and tables. And we'll create a join game function in just a second where we pass in the table ID. And we'll say join table and table. So that's going to be, it's just a button that's going to say join table and then the table ID. It's going to call a function called join game. So let's make that function. Async task join game. That's going to take in a table ID. And now here we're going to do kind of the same thing, only we're going to not create a new GUID, but we're going to just pass in the one that we got as a parameter. And I think that should do it. Now, the question is, how do we know what tables are available to us? Right now we have no way of knowing that. Let's go ahead and create a function, async task refresh tables, that kind of fetches that information. So basically what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to create an API or some kind of thing that returns back a list of table IDs, and then we'll kind of show those on the screen. So let's do that. Let's do that first. So right now, if you use the default Blazor server template, you're stuck with a weather forecast controller. We don't need a weather forecast controller, so I'm just going to rename this. I'm just going to say API controller, and I'll rename it here as well. Okay, and I'll get rid of most of this. I'll keep the constructor though, because we will have to do something in there, I'm assuming. And now in the get function, let's make it have a path of get tables, and we'll say get tables, and that's going to return IEnumerable of string. So what do we do here? We need to somehow get a list of tables that was populated by the multiplayer hub, and there's no really great way to talk back and forth between the two. In fact, the multiplayer hub itself doesn't even have a way to kind of keep track of these things, because it's not necessarily static, it's just a hub. So what I think we need to do here is we need to create a table controller, like a table manager, and I'm going to go ahead and put that in a new folder. So let's say data table manager.cs, and this will just basically have a list, actually a dictionary probably would make more sense. Public dictionary string int, where the string is going to be your table ID, that's going to be your key, and the int is going to be the number of players connected to that table. So if we have just one player, this will be 1. If we have 2, it'll be 2. And ideally, we won't be able to join if there's already 2 players on it. We'll call it tables equals new. And again, I'm using a C#9 thing here. You don't have to specify the type if you've already specified it. So saves a little bit of room. And now what we need to do then is we need to inject this table manager into our controller and our hub. So let's go ahead and go to the startup, and we'll go to services.add singleton, put the table manager in there, and we probably have to use a namespace of some kind. And now we should be able to inject this table manager into both the API controller and the hub. So here, let's go ahead and do table manager, and I'm just gonna, whoops, we need to use the using here, and I'm gonna just create a field. So we're assigning this field, and we're gonna go ahead and grab all of the tables that have less than 2 users on it and return those table IDs. So let's do table manager dot tables dot where, and we're going to do n dot value is less than 2. And again, the value for this dictionary is just the number of connected players. So we want all of the tables that have less than 2 players on it, and we're going to just select the key. The key is just the table ID. So we'll just return that. Assuming that's correct, we should, when we call get tables, we should have a list of table IDs coming back from this function. And now we actually need to populate this, so we should do that in the multiplayer hub here. So let's go ahead and probably need to do, we need to add a constructor to our multiplayer hub so we can inject the table. Public multiplayer hub, and we're going to say table manager again, and we're going to assign a field. Okay, so let's go ahead and if table manager dot contain or dot tables dot contains key, so if that table already exists in the table manager, we're going to try to join it. So we'll say if table manager dot tables table ID dot, or that's gonna return the number of connected players because we're using a dictionary. So we'll say less than 2. So if it's a valid table, we're going to go ahead and join it, and we're going to send this information as well. Okay. Actually, shoot, yeah, we'll go ahead and put that. We'll leave that there. So we're going to be adding ourselves to the group here, and let's go ahead and make an else statement, and we're just going to do this here. So we're going to be able to join if there's less than 2 players connected, and we're going to do groups.add to group async, and we're going to let them know that we want to be added to this table, and we're going to send them a notification that we've been added to the table. That's kind of what we're doing here. If we're the first player, which means that it wasn't already in the dictionary, we don't even need to send a notification because we're the only one in the table, or in the table, but we will need to add ourselves to this group. And the last thing we need to do here is we need to do table manager .tables.add table ID 1, and that's just going to give us 1 player for that table, so that our table manager can be used later on. And I think here we also need to do table manager.tables table ID ++, and that should increment the number of players at that table. So if we've got it all set up correctly, we should be able to join the table. And let's go ahead and try that, I guess. Oh wait, no, sorry. We were just creating in the API controller a way to get the tables and see which ones we can join. So in the index, then the Razor page here, I want to grab that information. So let's go ahead and set up a HTTP client, and we'll just do client.get from JSON async, and this is a helper method that lets us grab something from the server, or from any kind of API rather, and we're going to convert that to a list of string, and we're just going to call this, and we're going to say /API/ what did I call that? Get tables. Okay, and that's going to return a list of strings, so we'll just assign that into tables. We're going to await that. So there we go. Let me go ahead and put this on a new line so you can see it a little bit better. So when we call refresh tables, we're going to just get a list of tables. So we need to actually call this function. We haven't done that yet. So let's call that right when we enter the page. So protected override async task on initialized async. And let's go ahead and do await refresh tables. Now we're going to call refresh tables later on as well, so that's why I've set it up as a separate method. But let's go ahead and try that. I think that should work. Let's try it. All right. So when we first come on here, there's no games, so we're going to create one. Now if we open up another tab and we go there, there we go. We have join table and then the table ID. So there we go. We can join it. Now if we open up in a third tab, we should not be able to join it because there's already 2 players there. So that looks correct. Looks like everything's working fine. Now the problem with this though is even though 2 players are connected to the table, either one of them can move the checkers. It's not really multiplayer yet, and in fact we can't even see the moves that are being made. So even though they're connected to the same table, they're really not connected in any kind of meaningful way. But just to make sure we get the basic connection right, what I want to do is I want to pass the SignalR connection to the checkerboard, and we're going to kind of start waiting for events to happen. So let's go ahead and go to the checkerboard, and we're going to say, I'm going to close that down. I don't know why IntelliSense is being weird there. There we go. So we're going to actually pass in as a parameter to this Blazor component. We're going to say parameter public hub connection, and I think again, like the other file, I think I want to use this as a namespace up here. Okay. And again, our IntelliSense is being a little bit weird, but if you hover over it, it looks like it's working. Just the coloring isn't quite right. But we should have a hub connection now. So when we initialize, what we want to do, this is our our checker initialization code, but we can ignore that for now. What I want to do is I want to do hub connection dot on, and that's going to take a method name. So this method name is going to correspond to this the function that we call on the send async here. So in this case, we're sending table joined. So we should be looking for table joined here. So in that case, if we see, okay. If we see that somebody's joined the table, we're just going to, maybe let's write out to the console. Someone joined our table. Just so we can make sure we have the connections going back and forth. And that's kind of important to know before we start doing the movement of the checkers. So let's go ahead and try it. So the first player that loads should, oh, we have an error here. Let's go ahead and see. Oh, we did not even pass the hub connection to the checkerboard. So from the index here, we have to do hub connection equals hub connection where, sorry, lowercase hub connection in this case. So that'll be our SignalR connection that we pass back and forth. All right, let's try that again. Okay, we hit create game and we've moved on here. And we shouldn't see anything in the console yet because nobody has joined. Let's go ahead and open up another tab. And we'll try to join the table. And now back on the console, we do see that someone joined our table. So it's going back and forth, which is exactly what we want. Okay, so let's first off worry about passing the moves to one player. Or from one player to another player. So when the white checker's clicked, in this case, we're going to move it, but we're also going to send a move notification to the other person. So let's go ahead and do that. On the checkerboard, when we, let's see, when we move the checker, what I want to do here is, so after we've moved it, well, actually, right before we moved it probably, because then we still have the old coordinates. We'll do hub connection dot send async. We'll say move, and here we can pass as many parameters as we want to. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to pass in the original column, and then the original row, and then the new column, and then the new row. So we'll go ahead and do that. And then from there, what we can do in the hub is we can add a new function for move. So let's go ahead and do that. And actually, you know what? I made a mistake. I need to pass the table ID here. And we don't know the table ID because we never actually figured out what it is from this side of it, from the checkerboard component. So we need to pass that in here. Table ID. All right. And then from the index.razor, we're going to pass in the table ID here. And I think actually we need to make this table ID global. Yes, this dot table ID equals table ID. So I think that should work. We just need to pass the table ID through to the checkerboard, and then the checkerboard, when it calls move, where did we put that? We need to pass the table ID here. So we're going to pass the table ID and then the columns and rows. So then in our hub, when we call move, we're going to pass in the table ID, and we'll say previous, this will be int previous column, int previous row. And then the same thing for the new one, int new column, int new row. Okay. So then we'll do, I think all we need to do here is basically this. I'm going to get rid of this. We're going to say all of the clients in our group except ourselves, we're going to send a message saying that we moved. And we'll pass in the previous column, previous row, new column, and new row. All right, I think that's right. Let's go ahead and subscribe to that event. So we're looking for the move event on the checkerboard. So when we initialize, we're going to be looking for not just table joined now, but we're going to be looking for hub connection.on move. And this is going to take 4 integers, if you remember, the previous column, previous row, new column, new row. So instead of void here, we're going to do int. And we're going to say int previous, well, no, hold on. Move, it takes a lambda function. So we're going to go ahead and do a lambda function here. It doesn't have to be a lambda function, but it just takes a function rather. So we'll go ahead and do, actually, you know what? Let's go ahead and actually make that a regular function. This could get quite lengthy. So we'll say move server, let's just call it server move. We got some notification from the server and we're going to move it. So void server move, and that takes int previous row, int previous column, int new row, int new column. Okay. So what we need to do is find the checker that existed at the previous row and column, and then move it to the new row and column. Shouldn't be too bad. Let's go ahead and do a black checkers dot where. Actually, not where. Let's do first or default. Where that checker dot column is the previous column, and the checker dot row equals the previous row. All right. So if that checker is null, we'll do the same thing for the white checkers list. Okay. So if that is the case, we should have a checker. Hopefully we should have one. And let's go ahead and set active checker equal to that checker, and then just move, just like we normally do. Will that work? Let's see. Actually, I do think we need to call evaluate checker spots before we move. Otherwise, we don't have the options that it can move to. I'm not sure. We'll find out. But let's just go ahead and also write out to the console just to make sure we are getting this this command. Moving checker to previous column, previous row. Let's just make sure we get that, and then we'll worry about if it actually is moving or not. All right, create a game. Join the game. Okay, so we're moving, and on this screen it doesn't look like it moved. Let's see if we have something in the console. It does say we are moving the checker though. So we got the command, but the move isn't quite working right. So I think we need to add evaluate checker spots here. I think just based on how we coded it before, I believe the cells possible has to be populated before we can move there. Actually, yeah, right here. So we need to populate the cells possible before we can even move there. So we'll call that first. I think what was going on is it was trying to move it, but it didn't think it was possible to move there. So let's go ahead and try it now. All right, we created a game. We join the game. Now on this screen, we're going to move here. And again, we did not actually complete the movement. So why not? Let's see. I wonder if checker actually existed. You know what? Let's just try debugging this. All right, we're going to create a game. We got to refresh here. Join the game. All right, and now, oh, we have this other breakpoint from before. Okay. Okay, so checker is null. Previous column, previous row. I wonder if, let me think. Where do we actually call the move function? We do column first and then the row. Is that what I was doing? No, I did it wrong. It should be previous column, previous row. I think I had them backwards. All right, let me double check the hub as well. So the hub is correct. It's starting with column. Okay. Let's try this again. All right, create a game. Join. And let's hope for the best here. Nope, it still did not work. You know what? Let's go ahead and debug this again. Something's not quite syncing up correctly. Okay. We hit our breakpoint, and checker is not null, so that's good. We're evaluating the checker spots, and let's see. All right. It's claiming that we cannot move there. So let's see. We're trying to move to row 5, column 4, and our active checker dot column is 4, and our active checker dot row is 5. So it's actually this. It's trying to move to. It's trying to move to itself. Oh. Yeah, we got to move to the new row, not the previous one. New row, new column. Okay, that would make sense. Let's go ahead and try that. Hopefully Fourth time's the charm here. Oops, I need to add myself as another player. Nope, it still did not work. Okay. Well, you know what? We're getting a little bit long here, so let's go ahead and probably call it a day for right now. And I think what I want to do is I'll just spend some time looking at this and seeing what's going on, and I'll have a fourth video that kind of finishes this all up, because we need to add in turns and everything else that way too. That way you're not moving on somebody else's turn. Like right now, I could move. Oh, wait a second. It moved. I think actually we just need to call state has changed here. Hold on. It didn't realize, I don't think, that the state needed to be updated. Let's see if that's actually what was the case. So, hey, all right, there we go. It actually is working now. So we can move the checkers back and forth. The problem still remains: either player can move either checker. So this player can move white, and this player can move white. I guess let's try to tackle that real quick. I think that won't be too bad. So what we need to do is we need to determine what player is what. So when you create the table, let's just assume that you're the white player, and when you join, we'll assume that you're the black player. So let's go ahead and create another Boolean here for is white, and we'll set that to true, I guess. And then on the checkerboard one, we'll pass that in as a parameter. And in this case, we would set it to false when you join. So on the checkerboard, let's go ahead and add a parameter for that. Okay. So now what we want to do is have the white player be able to move on the white turns and the black player be able to move on the black turns. So let's go ahead and figure that out. There's this checker clicked event here that gets called anytime that you click a checker. And so what we'll do is we'll go ahead and say if white turn and not white. I don't like that name. I'm gonna rename that real quick because that's not very descriptive. White is white player. Okay. So if you're the white player, then you can move. Where was I? Okay. So if it's the white turn and you're not the white player, then we won't let you click it. Similarly, if it's not the white turn and you are the white player, we'll return. And honestly, that could probably just be combined to this. So yeah, we don't need both those if statements. There we go. Let's try that. Let's see if that works. All right, get rid of all these other tabs. We'll create a game, and we get an error right off the bat. Let's see, what's the problem? Checkerboard does not have a matching property. Oh yeah, I renamed it, so I didn't change it here. Is white player. Okay, let's try that again. All right, we created the game. Let's join it. Okay, so if everything's correct, this player shouldn't be able to move at all right now, and that looks to be the case. This player should be able to move, and now this player shouldn't be able to move the black pieces, whereas this one can. So it looks like it actually is. It's working fine now. So you could theoretically put this out on a web server somewhere and play a game of checkers. So I think that actually about covers what I wanted to cover with this. And yeah, I may touch this up a little bit and actually put it out on a web address somewhere. If I do that, I'll put it in the comments of the video so that you can go out there and actually play some games. And again, I'll update the GitHub repository with everything that we've done here today. And yeah, if you have any other suggestions for videos going forward, let me know. I'm going to go ahead and I think probably start a video maybe in how you might want to create a social media site if that's something that you're interested in. So that's probably what I'm going to do next. So yeah, I think that's about it. Thanks for watching.